Love Life, featuring your hosts Rebecca Detman and Jane Donovan.
The sun shines bright as it moves across my face. I feel the light.
I imagine only that which pleases me.
Welcome to Love Life. I'm Rebecca Detman.
And I'm Jane Donovan.
And this is your sex, relationships, communication, spirituality, cosmic podcast show that we know that you listen to every Wednesday. And today we are going a little bit deeper into the spiritual side of things. And we thought that we'd start with a message that we got from a listener via our Facebook page. And she says, I have a question. What are some techniques to help one to determine the difference between intuition and imagination? For example, I have a feeling if I drive this way there might be an accident versus me just imagining being in a car accident when I'm driving the car. Not as a feeling but as a creative mind, or is this just an anxiety thing? So she's basically saying, I mean, if I just boil it down very, very simply, she's saying, how do I tell the difference between I'm psychically feeling a car accident is waiting for me and I'm just imagining a worst case scenario could be waiting for me? This is a really common problem and it's a great question.
I thought it was a brilliant question because as an empath, I really struggle with that because I would add, is it my imagination, is it my intuition, or is it somebody else's stuff?
Yeah.
You know, that adds a third realm into that question.
And as a lot of our listeners open up emotionally and consciously, and as they really begin to bring back the powers of their intuition, which have probably always been there for many of them may have had it in childhood, may have lost it along the way, maybe reclaiming it now, or maybe really radically opening up to strong psychic stuff right now. This is a good tutelage in this kind of stuff because when you first start to really play with your psychic abilities and start to get familiar with them and hone them, this is some of the first stuff that you come up against, which you hear in every single psychic workshop across the country on a Saturday from 2 to 4. There's a psychic skills workshop on at the local WEA, and we've got Mystic Dolphin. Mystic Dolphin is here today to teach us how to learn to read our auras and chakras, and we're going to be doing some... What's it called when you put it in a bag and you feel it?
I don't know, but you've stopped a joke halfway through.
I did, didn't I?
What do you put in a bag and feel it?
Psychokinesis. We've got some objects in some brown paper bags today, ladies, and we're going to be holding them in our hands and determining what they are just using our intuitions.
Okay.
So, right?
How many fingers am I holding up behind my back?
Yeah, and what's on the card before you flip it over, what number, what suite. And so... what you'll hear in these sorts of seminars and workshops and classes is people will say things like, oh, but I just made that up.
And I know that when I first thought I might be channeling, I was second-guessing myself all the time. And I thought, no, that's just, I'm making it up. I'm imagining this. I read this somewhere. I'm paraphrasing something. It's my subconscious. It's whatever. So you do have that paranoid state, definitely. I think this is just such a cool question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, James, I know personally a question that you've been talking to me about for years because it's really weighed on your mind and it's exactly on this topic. So I think that telling this story is going to help people learn how this goes in a real life sense. Has to do with plane crashes.
Oh, my gosh. And do you realise that in 5 days' time I'm putting my 17-year-old daughter on a plane to Thailand for 3 weeks?
And this is your worst fear,
and
right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And so that started because I've had well over 20 dreams of plane crashes. And at the same time, I'm not a nervous flyer at all, but it's also this thing about separation from children. And I actually think that when I've had the plane crashes after much analysis on Mr. Google and having beautiful people like Beck help me over the years, I realised that every time I've had the plane crash dream, it has simultaneously been at a time in my life when I'm going through great change. And it could be career, it could be relationships, it could be the role I'm playing. Am I going into motherhood? Am I moving into having teenage children? Whatever, friendship changes, all sorts of different things. And so I see it as symbolic. And I see that as being very, very separate now from the reality of somebody I know is going to be in a plane and die.
Dreams are a tough area because I've had 2 people who aren't hugely psychic, as in every now and then they might get a twinge in their day-to-day lives, but they don't really consider themselves massively spiritual. But both of them, for example, had the dreams that predicted the tsunami and 9/11. So they saw tidal waves, they saw planes into buildings. and told people about it, and then it happened. Now,
Yeah, that freaks you out.
It freaks you out. But it's not like, I almost don't, I see why this is so hard to talk about, because how come their dream is different to Jane's 20 plane crash dreams?
Yeah.
How are they any different?
Well, I've also had the other one too, where I had a dream where I was at my girlfriend's father's funeral and woke up and went, oh, wow, that was horrible. But I actually had not seen her for a while, and I thought that was really more of an opportunity for me to reconnect with her or catch up with her sooner rather than later. Except that a few days later, suddenly out of the blue, her dad died.
And you saw her at the funeral.
And yeah, so I've had both, and it is really hard to know.
So because you've had both, can you feel into any difference between, say, for example, your plane crash dreams, which I feel completely is to do with symbology and patterns and stuff going on, you know, that's dream symbology, I think,
Yeah.
versus the premonition dream you had about the grandfather's death?
No, I can't tell the difference. I wish I could say yes, I can't.
Yeah.
So my coping mechanism for it is that in both of those types of dreams, I had really strong emotional feelings. So what I've chosen is every dream I have is to hook into what was it I was feeling, and that's the work I've got to do on now.
Yeah.
And so that way, whether it's a premonition or whether it's a signpost is irrelevant, because both are giving me the gift of healing. And that's the only way I can live, because I can't be paranoid about every dream I have.
Look, the blunt truth of it is, if we go back to Mystic Dolphin's psychic skills class, is that...
I love that name.
is that when... And see, I have told people this when I've done my little psychic skills workshops as well. The fact is, imagination and intuition are so close together on the bandwidth, on the frequency, that I think there's actually not a lot of difference. And I use this as a good thing and as a teaching tool. So somebody says, oh, I can't be psychic, I can't do that. Well, can you imagine something? When beautiful Craig Hominy, who we
Yes.
interviewed on this show some time ago, who's a hypnotherapist, when I went and saw him for hypno, one of the first exercises he has you do to kind of warm you up to hypno is, he says, so just put your hand out in front of you and imagine that you're holding a lemon, a cut half of a lemon. Bring it up to your nose, smell it, see the colour, see how it looks, if it's got a leaf on it or if it's this kind of a shape or it's got seeds, what does it look like? So he's engaging all of the senses in a very realistic, co-creative type way. Then he says, so bring it right up and now imagine you're taking a huge bite into it, and you can actually feel your saliva glands, responding and all of that. And that is why the brain knows no difference between imagination and kind of that psychic mind, that sort of created reality. And so this is, of course, the statistics about the basketball team that practiced in their minds versus the basketball teams that went on the court for a week, and then at the end they compared the difference, and of course the ones who practiced in their minds usually were better than the ones who
because
physically
they don't fail.
So
in your imagination you don't
can't fail.
whereas physically you can.
So one of the best ways to start to become psychic is to stop asking yourself at every juncture, oh, but did I just make that up? Oh, but was that my imagination? Oh, but I maybe just, I just created that. Well, so what? You're coming into a realm where there's not a lot of difference, this fantasy, reality, daydreamy, theta brainwave state way of being. It's exactly the same state as when you kind of stare into a corner and someone waves a hand in front of you and goes, hello.
Yeah, you're dazing.
You've switched wavelengths, bandwidths. You've gone up to a psychic channel then. And it's very, very, you're basically already in the realm to start channeling or being psychic once you're kind of in that blocked out place. You see your phone rings and you guess who it is before you pick it up. You're right. You're going to, read something on a billboard before you turn the corner and read it, whatever it is. A psychic is only taking those small moments of deep awareness, deep preconceptive awareness, and they're just stretching it out for longer and holding that space for up to an hour or more hours at a time as they then channel. So it's a bit like the muscle at the gym. They're just learning how to really use it and pump it up. Now, as part of learning to use it, and this is speaking myself as a psychic for the last, how many years now? Over a decade, is that you become very swift with practice over time at differentiating the voice in Rebecca's head, which is my brain, versus information that is channeled or is picked up from a different plane of reading radio broadcasts in the universe. They're two different things. Now, I must admit that even for me, 11, 12 years into this, if you pressed me, I'd still actually fumble to articulate. The difference is so subtle.
It's so
between
gentle.
your brain and, for example, the voice of an angel or the voice of a divine intuition.
Well, the way because Beck was the one that actually said, will you just channel for me? I remember one night that she jumped in my car and said, I want to ask you a question. I need you to channel. I said, Beck, I don't channel. She went, oh, rubbish. Just do it. She bullied me. She had a big vent bully. And I went, oh, my gosh, I've got the psyched in stilettos. I've got this queen of psychic ability in my car wanting me to channel. And I went, oh, my God, I've just got to do this. I jumped. And she wouldn't let me second guess. Now I'm talking about you in the third person, sorry. But you wouldn't let me second guess. And I just went for it, and you're going, yes, makes sense, makes sense. So sometimes we've got to kind of get that external validation. You kind of got to jump.
Plunge.
And so that was my validation to just, okay, Jane, you're doing it, just do it. So keep doing it, which I did. And over time, of course, you get better and you get more validation, etc. But then there was that moment so my channeling had always been connecting with my team for the wisdom that I wanted to speak in the way that was in alignment with my vibration. But it was only more recently that over the past couple of years that I've had people, close friends, who have lost somebody very dear to them, that I decided to get that bit bolder and try and connect with that one specific soul. And I was so nervous. And they give you weird stuff to say because they're wanting to try and give the proof.
The souls.
To the friend, that you have actually connected with that person. So I remember one of them with a gorgeous girlfriend, Kat, and her friend had traumatically suddenly passed away. And I'm saying, I've got to tell you something like, I'm looking at she had white gravel in her backyard. And I said, it's not gravel, but it's white and it's like gravel. And she just went, would it be pebble? I went, yeah, pebble, that's it, pebble. So this lady's surname that had crossed over, her surname was Peace. My gorgeous friend Kat had been in Bali till the day before, and she was supposed to be with her friend. And she went anyway, and she bought this lovely pebble that had peace written on it. And that was her little memento by the side of her bed for her to remember her friend. So it's so random. You've got to jump. And Beck would give you a million of those stories. But that's me as more of an L-plater on this type of stuff. So you've got to just feel the fear, feel stupid, say it, do it.
Yes. And again, this is Psychic Skills Class Basics. So when you first start to open up to receive information, of course most of it's not going to make sense. It's like tuning into a random radio channel and flipping across the dials and you hear bits and pieces of all kinds of weird stuff. Just because it doesn't make sense to you doesn't mean what you're getting is not valid or important or means something to the person you're with.
Yes.
And so there's a hell of a lot of trust factor that needs to come into play when we start doing intuitive work. There's a lot of surrender, there's a lot of faith, and there's a lot of trust. It's about not taking it too seriously, not putting so much pressure on it. It's not about a fail thing or a report card thing or right or wrong. It's important to stay in the energy of playing when being intuitive. So I'm just going to play with my angel cards because it's a fun thing to do, and whatever comes through, I'm not going to put too much of a heavy meaning or emphasis on any of it. I'm just going to see what pops up and have some fun with exploring that.
And you can have discipline and rules within this. So, for example, the affirmation that I said at the beginning was, I imagine only that which pleases me. I have chosen I'm not interested in having premonitions of anything negative of the future. I'm not interested in either receiving that information myself or being the catalyst for passing that on to someone else.
Yeah, we want to set the intention.
I don't. That's my intention. It's strong. And so I don't get that stuff. I might get weird stuff, but I don't get anything that could potentially be painful, hurtful, outside of maybe painful in an emotional coaching sense, which the person is ready to hear and wants to hear, versus I'm going to just drop a bomb on you now and really have your world rocked and shaken and in fear. I don't work in fear. That's it, full stop.
Like I can remember a radio interview years ago and the guy said something to me like, so that, and then he inserted like the latest world bombing terrorist, whatever thing that happened last month. Did you see that coming? And I said, no, because I don't go looking for those sorts of things. Like I wasn't asking those questions.
Yeah.
And that's, people will say, oh, I'm too scared to have a psychic reading because I don't want to hear anything bad or I don't want to, and it's like, but you're coming from the premise, you believe that I'm going to be looking for the bad stuff to tell you? What makes you think I'm searching around for miscarriages, car crashes and deaths?
Yeah.
Because a lot of psychics do, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, they do, but
Not
I
a
actually think
lot.
they actually work on a lower plane.
Yeah, I mean the psychics who are into power play, into wanting to take the power off the person who comes in the room and sits down opposite them. They want to kind of, there might be some little old lady who has never done any self-work on herself. She might be psychic, but she's not spiritual.
And let's talk about the whole balance of everything that ever was, ever exists, of yin and yang, black and white, etc. We have dark and light on the other side. There are angels. Guess what? There's bad guys there too. Do we want to call it the devil or whatever label you want to give, whatever, I'm fine with.
It's just personalities.
However, when we are learning to be psychic, you have to be disciplined about plugging into the highest realms of love. And that is what Beck and I are so disciplined on, because the psychic that says, oh dear, get your will in order, I see bad news for you, is feeding off your fear vibration. Now, the reason they've received that message is that the food for the bad guys on the other side is fear. The food for the good guys on the other side is love. So when you are talking to a psychic or know of a psychic who is delivering any message that puts you in fear, that vibration is the food for the expansion of the dark side. So they are only connecting to the dark side. And what the dark side does to try and get their way in to expand themselves is to give the psychic enough accurate information that you then buy into that psychic's ability so that then they can play with you. And I know this because I worked with a psychic who won the award for one of the best psychics in the UK, and that's how he played. And he had so much negative shadow stuff going on, it wasn't funny. And yet the abilities he had were mind-blowing, from finding murdered bodies, etc. He was incredible, but he was playing on a lower field. So you've got to play on the high field.
I think we're now starting to really hit the point of today to help people. So we've said, first of all, to open up your intuition at all, you kind of just have to throw yourself wide open, which, yes, is scary, but you have to be, take the pressure off yourself and just be open to whatever you're receiving, whether it's quote unquote imagination or whether it's something a bit more divinely inspired, go with it. But couple that with, as Jane is saying, it's just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like specific intention setting before you do this activity. So you want to be saying, if I am going to be just travelling through the different planes of the universe or scrolling through the different radio channels, I don't want the shitty ones. I want the higher vibrational stuff to be there. So you're setting the intention. Now, third of all, like any form of practice or homework, or like I said, building the muscle at the gym or whatever, you will start to learn over time for you the different ways that messages come. And so, for example, I'll speak for myself personally, and don't take this on anybody because yours will be different. But mine, it has taken me a long time to learn this. I've learned a few things. When I channel, it's very fast, it's very quick, it's very clean, and I immediately forget. I do an hour with you, I meet you in the street, I don't know your name, don't know your face, don't remember you, I couldn't tell you a thing about you. Don't know anything about it, right? It's passed through. If I held on to it, I'd be schizophrenic by now. I couldn't hold on to this many people's junk. Like, it's impossible, right? Second of all, when I have my own personal private premonitions, they're usually the same energy. They're quick, they're clean, and I have no emotional attachment to it. It's more like
An observation.
When I was a girl and I was in my parents' house looking out the window at this beautiful old locust, can't even say the word, tree that they used to have next door, thinking that tree fills such a huge, beautiful space in my parents' garden. Wouldn't it be a shame if that got cut down? 3 days later, it was cut down after like 40 years of being there. I had no way of knowing that. That was a premonition, but I didn't have, when I sort of received that feeling about the tree, there was no, sadness or grief or anger or fear around it. I just received it and moved on. Third of all, the kinds of intuitions that I've had where I really have been about to walk into the line of fire, like not physical danger, but more like verbal abuse, generally, or a sort of emotional, energetic, having my cage rattled, my stomach has told me hours before, sometimes 2 days before. So I personally will get a gnawing, unsettled feeling in my gut that something is going to happen to me. I won't know what it is, but I will have received the warning. And I'll say, okay, I know that in the next today or maybe tomorrow, I'll have an interaction with a person and it's going to make me feel really uncomfortable, and it's coming.
That's interesting you say gut, because I was actually going to say that's how I know if it's intuition. If it's intuition for me, I physically can feel it in my gut. It's that tightening, it's that butterflies, it's that nervousness, it's that anxiety, but it's all in my gut. It's not in my head.
Correct. And when we channel, the energy goes up higher
Yes.
into more of the third eye space,
Yes.
which is the sort of the sixth chakra, the violet sort of silver zone, whatever, indigo, whatever colour you see up there. That's more of the part of the body that we're using for that level of communication
Yes.
and receiving.
And then when we talk about the imagination in the negative of, oh my goodness, I'm going to have a car accident, etc., that's where the affirmation from today comes from. I only imagine that which pleases me. So if I have a thought that's negative, of a negative premonition, and I want to know, is that my imagination or is that my intuition, my gut feeling, or am I channeling something? You know, there's three things really there, isn't there? If it's my imagination and I've had the negative thought process, I quickly change that thought process to something positive, and therefore I've changed it. So it's no longer there. Versus, I don't think you can get rid of a premonition. It's going to stay with you. You actually can't mindfully get rid of it.
This is gold.
Oh, good.
This is the answer. Because if it is just a thought, it's like plasticine and it's malleable. If it's a deeper knowing, it will gnaw away at you.
Yes. So, for example, children, planes, that is my imagination. And so then when I feel that fear, and it's happened a few times in the years, and I go straight to Beck, she gets me right into alignment on it, where my imagination, I can see it's my imagination and it's gone. It's not a premonition. It clears and that gut's gone.
It's hooked
And
into
it's
an
fine.
emotion. That's more about Jane processing an emotion, which her kind of logical brain has sort of placed onto a plane as a symbol of that feeling of being out of control, hitting a brick wall, like those sort of metaphors
Yes.
is what's happening
Yes.
there. Yeah.
And it's also of not being in control and not being able to continue to, provide for my children when they're not there. It's all that, separation thing and children getting older, blah, blah. But that's how I think you can try and differentiate between the two.
That your body, things are going to show up in different places in your body. And, Jane and I, obviously, the whole point of this show is that we talk to you about your emotions and your feelings, and we get you to understand where your body holds them. So I feel tight in my jaw, I feel sick in my tummy, I feel tense in my shoulders. We say, what colour is that? Can you describe it? Is it spiky? Is it metallic? Is it grey fog? Is it brown? Is it smushy? What is it? Can you articulate the emotion? People say, I'm stressed. That's not a feeling. Like, I want the emotion. Okay, I feel out of control. What's the emotion? I feel sad. Go deeper. I feel